Okay, we're back with part 2 of the flight from Geraldton to Perth in the PMDG 737 in FSX. We're approaching top of Climb, which is going to be 29,000 feet, and we're proceeding on track. A couple of things I forgot to mention in the previous video. This isn't to be confused with real life training at all. This is just for fun. I'm not a real pilot, and I just have a few thousand hours in the simulator, and the actual purpose of this video is for a particular person that's struggling with, come to terms with flying the 737, and I was hoping to help them out. A couple of other things I missed that I need to make note on is when you first get into the simulator, make sure that you do set the park brake. Also, I skipped the section, amongst other checks that we didn't do, but this was an expedited departure. We didn't set the cruise altitude in the pressurization panel, which we should have put at 29,000 feet. Because we're not using air traffic control, there is no step climb, so we're going straight to 29,000 feet. So we just set that to 29. Also, I don't think I said in the first video about setting the ignition to continuous for takeoff, and also I hadn't set the navigation light. So there are a few too many steps that we missed, but I didn't do any practice to setting that first video up, so just making those points. So as you can see, we're just approaching 29,000 feet, and I've checked the wind at Perth. According to Active Sky Next, it's approximately 200 degrees at about 12 knots. So that's going to lend us to landing on runway 21, which is the main runway at Perth Airport. So we're just going to set that up to our approach. We're going to do an ILS-Z 21 approach at Perth Airport. So if we look at our FMC and we go to arrivals, and then YPPH arrival, and then go to the next page, and it's the ILS-Z. That's what we're using, and our transition is available to select Hague. This is where you need to be able to look at your arrival templates, arrival charts, which are available from Air Services Australia, and they're freely available for anybody to look at and to use for our simulator purposes. And that you can choose terminal maps, and then you can also, which will show you the aerodrome charts, and you can also select all the approaches that are available. And this particular one we're using is ILS-Z 21 at Perth Airport. So Hague is our initial approach fix that we're going to use, and as you can see, that transition is available to choose on the FMC. So I'm just selecting that and then execute. Now, we're not using a star at this point. We have got on the left hand side of that panel stars available. If you're using air traffic control in FSX, it doesn't understand stars and SIDS, so it all depends if you want to, how realistic you want to do it. But FSX doesn't know how to handle them. The plane knows about them, and you can program them, but if you're using air traffic control, they'll always deviate from them. So if we have a look at the legs now, you'll see that we've actually got a disconnect, a route disconnect, discontinuity. There's a disconnect between those two. So what we do is we click on Hague, which is our initial approach fix, and then we click on the disconnect or discontinuity, and that overwrites it, and then we execute it. So now that gives us a smooth transition from Geraldton, which was the end of the flight plan, into Hague, which is the beginning of the approach. A couple of other things that we have to set up before we arrive. We have to set our minimum altitude for that approach, which for a Cat 1 ILS at Perth Airport is 250 feet. So if I click the reset button, just zoom in on that a little bit, the reset button, and you'll notice that it says Barrow 200. We can dial that up to 250, so that's our minimum approach. If we can't see the runway by that point, we need to do a missed approach and follow the procedures that involves, and that is also shown on the chart as well. When we get closer to the airport, we've got to set our ref speed, and the way we do that is we click on this top button here and we select the flaps that we're going to use, and it's asking us to do a descent now, so I need to go and have a look at that. Just bear with me. Yeah, okay, so we've got let's move that out of the way for a minute. Okay, the flight computer is actually telling us to reset our altitude because it's ready to start the descent. So again, because we're not using air traffic control, I'm just going to dial it all down to our Hague altitude of 2,500. Top of descent's just gone past, so the plane's now controlling the descent. It's also controlling the speed, so we don't have to worry about that. So LNAV is still on, VNAV is on, the throttles have been managed by the plane, and it's happily descending. So what I was showing in here, in our reference, we're going to do a flaps 40 landing. So if I select that, it puts it in the scratch pad, and then I'm going to add it into here to give us our reference, which is now appears down the bottom here. So that's our landing speed. So we use 136, that says, plus 5 for wind. So we're targeting around about 141 knots on landing. Okay, that's about all we need to do for the minute. We're going to have a third part to the video, which will be a bit further down the track. Probably about as we get to just past halfway between Geraldton and Hague, and hopefully pull off a successful landing. Right, back shortly.